What happens when America's beloved morning show hosts come face to face with Hollywood royalty turned real royalty? And the conversation takes a shocking turn that nobody saw coming. You won't believe what unfolds when diplomatic pleasantries dissolve into accusations, finger-pointing, and a confrontation so explosive that it leaves an entire studio audience gasping in disbelief. Last night's episode of Live with Kelly and Mark delivered television gold that has everyone talking, as what began as a promotional appearance for Meghan Markle's latest venture quickly spiraled into a battle of wills that would end with security being called and cameras continuing to roll long after they should have stopped. The stage was set for what should have been another smooth celebrity interview on the popular morning talk show. Kelly Ripa, radiant in a powder blue blazer, sat across from her co-host Mark Consuelos, who wore his trademark charming smile as they prepared to welcome their high-profile guest. The studio audience buzzed with anticipation, phones already recording as Meghan Markle made her entrance, dressed in an elegant cream-colored ensemble that seemed carefully chosen to project both approachability and authority. "Please welcome Meghan Markle," Kelly announced with her characteristic enthusiasm, though those paying close attention might have noticed the slightest tension in her voice. The applause was thunderous as Meghan glided onto the set, her practiced smile never wavering as she embraced both hosts with air kisses that seemed just a fraction too formal for the usually warm atmosphere of the show. As Meghan settled into the guest chair, smoothing her outfit with deliberate precision, Mark leaned forward with his usual interviewer's posture. "Meghan, it's wonderful to have you here. You're looking fantastic, and we're excited to hear about your new project." "Thank you so much for having me," Meghan replied, her voice carrying that distinctive blend of American directness and acquired British refinement. "I'm thrilled to be here, though I have to say, the energy in this studio is quite different from what I'm used to." Kelly's eyebrows raised slightly at the comment, a micro-expression that regular viewers would recognize as the first sign of her legendary quick wit preparing to deploy. "Different how?" she asked, her tone still friendly, but with an edge that suggested she was already reading between the lines. Meghan's laugh was perfectly calibrated, neither too loud nor too soft. "Oh, just more immediate, more raw. In my previous work, there was always more preparation, more control over the narrative." The word control hung in the air for just a moment too long, and Mark's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. As someone who had spent years in the entertainment industry before joining Kelly on the show, he understood the subtle dynamics of celebrity interviews, and something in Meghan's demeanor was setting off alarm bells. "Well, that's what makes live television exciting," Mark said, his smile still in place but his journalist instincts clearly activated. "No scripts, no second takes, just authentic conversation." "Authentic," Meghan repeated, and there was something in the way she said it that made both hosts exchange a quick glance. "Yes, I suppose that's one way to put it." Kelly, never one to let a loaded comment slide by without investigation, leaned forward slightly. "You sound like you have some thoughts about authenticity in media. Care to share?" The question was delivered with Kelly's trademark blend of curiosity and challenge, and the studio audience seemed to sense the shift in energy. Meghan's posture straightened, and for the first time since sitting down, her smile seemed less practiced and more calculating. "Well, Kelly, since you asked," Meghan began, her voice taking on a tone that anyone familiar with royal interviews would recognize as diplomatic but pointed. "I think there's a difference between authenticity and sensationalism, between genuine interest in someone's story and, well, the kind of coverage that focuses more on creating drama than understanding truth." Mark's eyebrows shot up, and he glanced at Kelly before responding. "That's interesting. Are you suggesting that some media outlets prioritize entertainment over accuracy?" "I'm suggesting," Meghan said, her voice gaining strength and losing some of its earlier warmth, "that some people in this industry have built careers on making others uncomfortable, on pushing boundaries not for the sake of truth, but for ratings." The studio audience was now completely silent, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Kelly's famous quick wit was clearly engaged, but she was also visibly processing the fact that her guest seemed to be making veiled criticisms of them. "That's a serious accusation," Kelly said, her voice still controlled, but with an undertone that regular viewers would recognize as dangerous territory. "Are you speaking from personal experience?" Meghan's laugh this time was different, sharper, less performance and more genuine emotion. "Personal experience? Oh, Kelly, where do I even begin? Do you know what it's like to have every word you say dissected, every outfit analyzed, every gesture turned into a headline?" "Actually," Mark interjected, his voice taking on a slight edge, "as someone who's been in entertainment for decades and married to someone who's been in the public eye even longer, I think we might have some idea." The comparison clearly struck a nerve. Meghan's composure cracked slightly, and for the first time, the audience could see genuine emotion flickering across her face. "With respect, Mark, I don't think you do. When you're criticized, it's professional criticism. When you make a mistake, it's a career misstep. When I make a mistake, or when someone decides I've made a mistake, it becomes a referendum on my character, my worthiness, my right to exist in certain spaces." Kelly's expression had shifted from professional curiosity to something approaching concern mixed with irritation. "Meghan, I understand that public scrutiny can be difficult, but surely you knew what you were signing up for when you chose to maintain a public profile after." "After what?" Meghan interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "After I married into a family that shall remain nameless? After I had the audacity to think I could use my platform for good? After I dared to have opinions about my own treatment?" The studio was now electric with tension, cameras capturing every micro-expression, every shift in body language. Mark leaned back slightly, his professional instincts warring with his growing discomfort at the direction the conversation was taking. "Look, Meghan," Kelly said, her voice taking on the no-nonsense tone that had made her famous. "Nobody here is attacking you. We invited you on to talk about your project, to give you a platform to share your story. But if you came here with an agenda, to lecture us about media ethics—" "Lecture you?" Meghan's voice was now clearly strained, her carefully maintained composure beginning to crack in earnest. "I'm simply pointing out that there's a difference between journalism and gossip, between asking tough questions and creating conflict for entertainment value." Mark's jaw tightened visibly. "Are you suggesting that's what we do here?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Meghan's response would prove to be the point of no return that would transform a tense interview into television history. "I'm suggesting," Meghan said, her voice now carrying unmistakable steel, "that this entire industry has a problem with how it treats women, particularly women who refuse to play by rules they never agreed to." But as the words left her mouth, and as Kelly's expression transformed from professional concern to something approaching genuine anger, it became clear that this confrontation was only just beginning. Kelly's famous composure, honed through decades of live television, finally began to crack as she processed what she was hearing. Her signature smile had completely disappeared, replaced by the kind of focused intensity that her longtime viewers had rarely seen directed at a guest. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level that somehow carried more weight than if she had shouted. "Are you seriously sitting in our studio, on our show, suggesting that we're part of some systemic problem?" Meghan shifted in her chair, but rather than backing down, she seemed to gain momentum from Kelly's reaction. "I'm saying that this industry, this very format we're sitting in right now, thrives on conflict. Look around you, Kelly. Look at your audience. They're not here for my project announcement. They're here because they smell drama, and shows like this feed that hunger." The camera operators, sensing television gold, zoomed in closer as Mark's face flushed with barely contained irritation. "Hold on just a minute," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You agreed to come on this show. You requested this appearance through your publicist. If you have such a problem with the format, why are you here?" "Because," Meghan said, her voice rising and losing all pretense of diplomatic restraint, "I thought maybe, just maybe, I could have an adult conversation about my work without having to defend my entire existence. But clearly, I was mistaken." Kelly's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Adult conversation? You've spent the last 10 minutes insulting our show, our industry, and basically everyone in this studio. If that's your idea of adult conversation, I'd hate to see what you consider childish." The studio audience was now completely silent, phones held high, capturing every moment of what was quickly becoming one of the most uncomfortable celebrity interviews in recent memory. The tension was so thick it seemed to press against the studio walls, and even the usually unflappable crew members were exchanging worried glances. Meghan's composure was now hanging by a thread. "You want to know what's childish, Kelly? Childish is reducing every woman who speaks up for herself to a stereotype. Childish is pretending that asking legitimate questions about media responsibility is somehow an attack on you personally." "But it is personal," Mark interjected, his professional facade completely abandoned now. "You're sitting in our chairs, benefiting from our platform, and using our airtime to accuse us of being unethical. How is that not personal?" The accusation hit its mark, and Meghan's careful media training finally crumbled completely. "Unethical?" she repeated, her voice rising to a level that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. "You want to talk about ethics? Let's talk about how this industry chews up women and spits them out. Let's talk about how it's perfectly acceptable to speculate about someone's mental health, their family relationships, their marriage, all for entertainment value." Kelly's eyes flashed with something approaching fury. "Are you implying that we've done those things to you? Because I can tell you right now, we've never discussed your personal life in any inappropriate way on this show." "Haven't you?" Meghan shot back, her voice now carrying years of accumulated frustration. "Really? So all those conversations about my adjustment issues and my demands and my difficult personality, those were appropriate journalistic inquiries?" Mark's face was now visibly red, his usual charm completely replaced by genuine anger. "We've never had those conversations about you on this show, Meghan. If you have issues with other outlets, take it up with them. Don't come here and attack us for things we haven't done." "But you're all part of the same system," Meghan exploded, her voice echoing through the stunned studio. "You all feed off each other. You all benefit from the same toxic culture that treats public figures like entertainment products instead of human beings." The words hung in the air like an accusation, and Kelly's response was swift and devastating. "You know what, Meghan? You're absolutely right about one thing. We are part of an entertainment system. This is a talk show, not a therapy session. If you can't handle being asked basic questions about your life and career without having a breakdown, maybe you shouldn't have chosen to remain a public figure." The brutal honesty of Kelly's words seemed to stun even Mark, who glanced at his co-host with something approaching concern. But Meghan's reaction was immediate and explosive. "A breakdown?" she said, her voice shaking with rage. "Is that what you call it when a woman stands up for herself? When she refuses to smile and nod while being systematically diminished?" "I call it deflection," Kelly fired back without missing a beat. "You came here to promote something, but instead you've spent the entire time making yourself the victim of imaginary attacks. Nobody here has diminished you, Meghan. If anything, we've given you more respect and airtime than you've shown us." Mark, sensing that the situation was spiraling completely out of control, attempted to regain some semblance of professional composure. "Look, maybe we should take a breath here and—" "No," Meghan interrupted, standing up abruptly from her chair, causing the studio audience to gasp audibly. "I don't think we should take a breath. I think we should be honest about what's happening here. You invited me on your show, and the moment I didn't play the role you expected, grateful, compliant, entertaining, you turned hostile." Kelly also stood up, matching Meghan's aggressive posture. "Hostile? We've been nothing but professional, even while you've been attacking us and our integrity. If anyone's been hostile here, it's been you from the moment you sat down." "Professional?" Meghan's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Is it professional to gaslight your guests? To make them feel crazy for having legitimate concerns about how they're treated?" The word gaslight seemed to be the final straw for Mark, who also rose from his chair, his face now flushed with genuine anger. "That's enough," he said, his voice carrying an authority that had been building throughout the confrontation. You don't get to come into our house and accuse us of psychological manipulation because we won't let you control the narrative. Control the narrative? Meghan's voice reached a pitch that made several audience members visibly wince. I'm not trying to control anything. I'm trying to have a conversation without being ambushed. Ambushed? Kelly's voice was now matching Meghan's intensity. We asked you about your project and your experience in media. If that feels like an ambush to you, then maybe the problem isn't with our questions. The confrontation had now reached a fever pitch, with all three participants standing, voices raised, and the studio audience watching in stunned silence as one of television's most explosive celebrity meltdowns unfolded in real time. But as Meghan's face contorted with rage and she opened her mouth to deliver what would clearly be her most devastating response yet, it became obvious that this confrontation was about to cross a line from which there would be no return. You want to know what the real problem is? Meghan screamed, her voice now completely unhinged and echoing through the studio with such force that several audience members actually flinched. The problem is that mediocre people like you have built entire careers on tearing down anyone who threatens your comfortable little bubble of irrelevance. The words hit the studio like a physical blow. Kelly's mouth dropped open in shock, while Mark's face went from red to pale in an instant. The audience gasped collectively, phones capturing every moment of what was clearly becoming television history for all the wrong reasons. Kelly was the first to recover, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. Mediocre? Irrelevant? She said, each word dripping with venom. You're calling us mediocre? We've been doing this show for years, building relationships with our audience, earning their trust and respect. What have you done besides marry well and then complain about the consequences? The brutality of Kelly's response sent shockwaves through the studio, but Meghan was beyond caring about consequences now. At least I didn't spend my career kissing up to celebrities and pretending that softball questions constitute journalism, she fired back, pointing an accusatory finger directly at Kelly's face. Mark stepped forward, his protective instincts for his wife and co-host now fully activated. That's it, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You need to leave. Right now. Oh, I need to leave? Meghan laughed maniacally, her composure completely shattered. Of course I do. The moment someone tells you the truth about yourselves, the moment someone refuses to play your pathetic little games, they need to leave. Kelly moved closer to Meghan, her own anger now completely unleashed. The truth? You want to talk about truth? Here's some truth for you. You came on our show with an agenda to create drama, and when we didn't give you the fight you wanted, you manufactured one. This whole performance has been calculated from the beginning. Performance? Meghan's voice cracked with rage. You think standing up for myself is a performance? You think refusing to be diminished by small-minded people is an act? I think, Mark said, his voice cutting through the chaos with cold authority, that you're having a public breakdown and using our show as your personal therapy session. And I think our audience deserves better than watching someone self-destruct on live television. The accusation of a public breakdown seemed to trigger something primal in Meghan. Her eyes flashed with pure fury as she turned to face the camera directly, addressing the audience with desperate intensity. You see this? This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment a woman shows any emotion, any passion, any refusal to be quiet and compliant, she's having a breakdown. She's unstable. She's the problem. Kelly stepped between Meghan and the camera, her protective instincts for her show and her audience now fully engaged. Don't you dare use our platform to spread your victim narrative, she said, her voice steady but filled with ice. You came here as our guest, and you've spent the entire time attacking us, our show, and our integrity. That's not standing up for yourself. That's being ungrateful and disrespectful. Ungrateful? Meghan whirled around to face Kelly again, her voice reaching heights that made the studio's sound technicians wince. Ungrateful for what? For giving me the privilege of being insulted on national television? For the honor of being gaslit by two people who think they're entitled to my compliance? Mark had clearly reached his breaking point. He signaled to someone off camera, and within seconds, two security guards appeared at the edge of the set. though they remained at a respectful distance, clearly hoping the situation wouldn't escalate further. "Security," Meghan said, noticing the guards and laughing with bitter disbelief. "You called security on me? For what? For having opinions? For refusing to be your dancing monkey? For being disruptive and hostile to our staff and our audience?" Kelly replied firmly, though her voice was beginning to show the strain of the confrontation. "This is a workplace, Meghan, and you're creating a hostile environment." "Hostile environment?" Meghan's voice was now so shrill it was almost painful to listen to. "I'll show you a hostile environment. Every single day of my life has been a hostile environment thanks to people like you who think they have the right to judge and critique and diminish anyone who doesn't bow down to their narrow little worldview." The studio audience was now openly uncomfortable, with several people actually getting up and leaving their seats. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of what was clearly becoming one of the most uncomfortable celebrity interviews in television history. Mark stepped forward again, his voice now carrying the authority of someone who had clearly made a final decision. "Meghan, you need to leave our studio now. This interview is over." "Oh, it's over?" Meghan said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Of course it is. The moment you can't control the narrative, the moment someone refuses to play by your rules, it's over. How convenient." Kelly moved to stand beside her husband, presenting a united front. "It's over because you've turned what should have been a promotional opportunity into a personal attack on us and everyone associated with this show. We've tried to be professional, but you've made that impossible." "Professional!" Meghan shrieked, grabbing her purse from beside the chair with such force that it knocked over her water glass, sending liquid splashing across the coffee table. "You call ambushing your guests professional? You call ganging up on someone professional?" "Nobody ambushed you," Mark said, his patience finally exhausted completely. "We asked you standard interview questions, and you turned it into this, whatever this is. You did this to yourself, Meghan." The accusation that she had done this to herself seemed to be the final straw that broke whatever remaining self-control Meghan had left. Her face twisted with pure rage as she pointed at both hosts, her voice reaching a crescendo that filled the entire studio. "You know what? You're right. I did do this. I did it because I'm tired of pretending that people like you matter. I'm tired of pretending that your opinions have any value. I'm tired of playing nice with irrelevant people who think they're important because they have a television show." The silence that followed her outburst was deafening. Even the crew members stopped what they were doing, staring in stunned disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Kelly and Mark stood frozen, their faces showing a mixture of shock, anger, and something approaching pity. Meghan seemed to suddenly realize what she had said, and for just a moment, her mask of rage slipped, revealing something that looked almost like panic. But it was too late to take back the words, too late to repair the damage, too late to salvage any dignity from the situation. "I'm leaving," she announced, though everyone in the studio already knew that her departure was inevitable. "And I hope your audience sees this for what it really is, a perfect demonstration of how this industry treats anyone who refuses to be silenced." She turned toward the exit, her heels clicking against the studio floor with sharp, angry sounds that seemed to punctuate each step. But as she reached the edge of the set, she turned back for one final, devastating parting shot. "Enjoy your little kingdom of mediocrity," she said, her voice now eerily calm compared to the screaming that had preceded it. "I hope it keeps you warm at night." And with that, Meghan Markle walked off the set of Live with Kelly and Mark, leaving behind a stunned studio audience, two shell-shocked hosts, and what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked-about television moments of the year. The cameras continued rolling as Kelly and Mark stood in speechless silence, trying to process what had just happened, while the audience sat in complete quiet, their phones still recording, capturing the aftermath of a confrontation that had spiraled so far beyond normal celebrity interview territory that it felt more like witnessing a car crash than a television appearance. As the studio lights continued to shine down on the now empty guest chair, with spilled water still dripping onto the floor and the echo of Meghan's final words still hanging in the air, it was clear that this was a moment that would be replayed analyzed, and discussed for years to come. A perfect storm of ego, anger, and miscommunication that had resulted in one of the most spectacular celebrity meltdowns ever captured on live television.